Pienaar. Let me just welcome and introduce our panel of MPs tonight. John Penrose is Conservative MP for Weston-super-Mare. Evening to you, John. Seema Malhotra is Labour MP for Feltham and Heston. Hi, Seema.
Hi, John.
And Stephen Gilbert is on the line. He's the Liberal Democrat MP for St Austell and Newquay. He's in our Truro studio. Stephen, hi.
Good evening, John.
3 MPs then, everyone a star, obviously. But before we get into the spiky, edgy politics on the agenda tonight, I wonder if any one of the 3, could compete for star quality with what we're about to hear. Can any of you then identify the senior political figure clutching the karaoke mic at a night out recently and letting rip with this?
I got chills tonight, and I'm losing control, but the power's simply...
That is more than enough of that. Seema, can you guess who that was?
Well, it's certainly not Ed Balls.
No, it's not Ed Balls. You don't know, clearly. What about you, John?
Keith Vaz.
You knew, didn't you?
I did, I'm sorry, yes.
But Stephen's going to tell us he knew. That's Keith Vaz.
I didn't realise he was so good.
Yeah, no, that was the surprise.
None of us realised he was that good.
Dolled up in a leather jacket at a party for a local councillor.
I didn't know, John. I thought it might be Eric Pickles.
Eric Pickles doesn't sing that well.
You started off with My Dear Chum.
Now let's talk about one of the things we've been digging into earlier on in the show. We were talking about the government plan. It's being talked up bullishly by David Cameron and ministers like Ian Duncan-Smith to stop EU migrants coming to this country with the chief aim of sucking up British welfare benefits as they would depict it. Well, I wandered down a bit earlier on to the Three Stags pub, that's this programme's local, to sound out the Sunday afternoon lunch crowd in there. How did they feel? Did they feel they'd been singled out as a soft touch?
You can get it if you really want.
What's your name again?
It's Luke.
Ian Duncan-Smith, David Cameron say no one should come here to get benefits. They should establish their residence, their work. Fair enough, or is that crowd-pleasing, anti-European stuff?
I'm kind of sympathetic to the idea that people need to work to get benefits, but benefits should be paid to a certain level. But I definitely think it's something that appeals to a certain faction of Daily Mail reading part of the country.
What's your name?
Mark.
So what do you think?
I would like the country to come out of the EU, so that would stop all the immigrants coming in, hopefully.
Edward, what do you think?
I don't like people that sponge, but I don't like people that get in the neck from people who condemn people that have a hard time.
Well, I think one of the things that makes this country great is its diversity. In terms of them tightening up a loophole, how are they going to do this? How are they going to monitor these people that arrive in the country? A lot of the focus should be the people that are already in the country at the minute.
Is this scapegoating you're saying now, are you?
I think so, yeah.
What's your name?
Sarah.
So, what do you think about that?
I think it's probably crowd-pleasing. I think we should encourage people to come to the country and do a lot of jobs that a lot of our own citizens don't want to do. I'm quite proud that we are a country that offers the benefits we do.
Lucy, what do you think?
Well, I was just thinking that actually the cost of implementing those extra measures might actually cost more than actually paying out the benefits for them. So all the extra bureaucracy that will be added on to create those tests, it might not actually be worth the cost, and it might be something he's using for the people that are really against immigration.
What's your name?
Simon. Well, I think it sounds perfectly sensible in principle. Quite how they're ever going to make it work, I really don't know. I mean, it seems to slightly undermine the whole concept of the European Union.
How does it do that?
In theory, it's meant to be a union. There aren't meant to be barriers, or at least the barriers that are there are meant to be as low as possible. So if you then decide that you're going to start erecting artificial barriers, it seems to undermine the concept. If you're not prepared to extend the privileges that you would to the existing members to new members, then maybe you need to think about whether or not you let them in at all.
And that's what they were saying down at the Three Stags earlier on. Stephen Gilbert on the line, Liberal Democrat MP down in Truro. Stephen, where do you stand on this? We heard from Ed Miliband earlier on. He wasn't especially impressed. What do you think?
Well, I think that everybody would say that we need to have tough immigration controls, that it's good for our economy that we have people who come here, take up jobs, want to work and be economically active, and those immigration controls that we have need to be fair for those people. And for people who come here with a desire to not be economically active, we already require them to be self-sufficient, to have medical insurance, and the coalition's already cut net migration by.
So is there any need then for this tough talk from your Tory colleagues, or is this playing to the gallery?
I think there is a certain element of playing to the gallery on this, but I do think it is a legitimate concern that people have when there are stories about people coming into the UK to do benefits tourism. The reality, though, I think is often a lot different, and continued migration to the UK is absolutely vital for our economic recovery. We need a tough but fair system. And we also, John, have to recognise that this is a two-way street. We've got 1 million Brits or so living in Spain, a couple 100,000 living in France. It's not just a one-way street, and we have to recognise that as well.
Yeah, although no one, as far as I can see, is talking about just raising the drawbridge. I mean, that traffic in both directions, it is there. It is seen as desirable by just about everyone. Seema Malhotra, Labour MP. What are your thoughts? Ed Miliband, your leader, was saying there, first of all, this was windy rhetoric. It was playing to the gallery. That was the implication of all of that. And it was not the thing to say when you don't know if you can carry it out. Is that a bit defeatist? If there's something wrong here, if there's an imbalance, if people are coming here to exploit the system, is it defeatist to say you can't do anything?
I don't think it's defeatist. I mean, I think actually what we've got to be really careful of, and Ed was right on this, is to not be looking at and playing the politics of immigration here. I mean, there's no more evidence to suggest that people are going to be coming for benefits and benefits tourism, other than or rather than actually coming to work. And I think that's been the experience so far. And all the three parties supported the accession of Bulgaria and Romania. The immigration minister has talked about supporting freedom of movement. What we know that we need to do is make sure that all the controls are in place that we can put in place to make sure that we don't have exploitation of the benefit system in this country, and that we have the support to make sure that there is enforcement of the minimum wage, that people aren't being exploited if they come here, that we're dealing with rogue landlords, all of those things where those who are coming here could well be exploited. I think we're right to raise those concerns, but I don't think we should be playing politics with immigration.
Okay, John Penrose, what do you think, Conservative MP?
I think that there's clearly an issue which needs to be fixed. There's a legitimate question about how big an issue it is, but it's clearly not right to have a system where you can claim, for example, I think there's an example you were using earlier on, for children, child benefit for children who don't even live in this country. So, yes, of course we should fix it, but we should also make sure we do it in a way which is, yes, absolutely is responsible and sensible. But I think people will be horrified at the time when we're all having to tighten our belts to know that there are loopholes going unfilled.
And this has nothing, John, to do with the by-election in Eastleigh or playing to the gallery or trying to get a few extra votes in the box?
If you can do well by doing good, then there's nothing wrong with that. But first of all, you need to do good.
Yeah, it's not an unfair answer. I mean, your colleagues here, I think, would take issue with a good deal of that. You're listening to Pienaar's Politics. Earlier on, we had Grant Shapps, Conservative Party chairman, on the show, who said, among other things, something quite interesting. We were discussing Labour's new promise of reintroducing the 10p lower rate of tax. And from Grant Shapps, the message seemed to me to be pretty clear. That was a bad idea. What might be a good idea would be just to raise the threshold, not just to £10,000, which is where the Liberal Democrats are committed to getting the figure before the next election, but beyond that, beyond £10,000. It sounded to us here as if he was floating an alternative to the 10p tax rate, and when the Tory party chairman starts doing things like that, you wonder if that's actually in the pipeline, and you wonder that really quite strongly. Stephen Gilbert, Liberal Democrat down in Truro, if that happens, you're going to be very happy, aren't you?
Well, I'm delighted that the coalition government has already taken steps to increase the personal allowance that people get on income tax, so that 23 million people are benefiting across the country, and some of the very lowest paid have been taken out of income tax.
I'm sure you are,
altogether.
Stephen. But what about the idea of pushing beyond even your £10,000 target?
Well, I think let's get to the £10,000 target first, which I think we're on track to do. This is a key pledge from the Liberal Democrats, from the front page of our manifesto being delivered by the coalition government. I then think, John, there's a very strong argument for looking at how it can be raised still further, particularly to cover the level that the minimum wage is paid at. It strikes me that if you're being paid the minimum wage, there's a very strong argument that suggests you shouldn't be liable for income tax on that.
John Penrose, Conservative MP, former minister. I mean, we're not overreading this, are we? When a Tory party chairman says, look, it would be rather a good thing to go above £10,000